Well, and that's kind of like where everything with the artist lawyer started. I feel like there's such a disparity between like knowing the law and knowing art.
And that's when he was like, oh, like I'm shooting Snoop Dogg's next music video. And he asked me to shoot his album cover. And
I would recommend always having a model release signed, always.
I am interviewing Maggie Fisher of The Artist Lawyer. We are going to be talking about things that photographers need to know legally to protect yourself. I've shared a couple stories I ran into with people stealing my work as well.
I'm a photographer. That's how I knew of you from the beginning. So I have a large studio based in Ocean City, New Jersey. We have about 12 associate photographers. I'm also an attorney, so I started photographing weddings when I was in college, and all through law school, I photographed 30 weddings a year. I clerked for an appellate judge. I worked for my dream law firm and had an offer to go full time there.
For your average one, you should assume that you will keep the copyright. They have personal usage. Color Me Wendy asked, do you get clients okay to use their face on advertising issues? So I know for my contracts and for your contracts, I forget, do you include like the model release inside the contract too?
Yeah, so I would recommend always having a model release signed. Always. I have had clients request to not have their image used because for privacy purposes or they're a celebrity. And then there's a different value associated with that too. Like it is industry standard to charge if you cannot use those images because and I always like to explain this to clients too, but they found you based on the images that they saw. And that's how more clients will continue to find you. And if you can't put out that work that you're creating, that you're proud of, then how will clients like this person that's hiring you find you? So there is an upcharge for that. If you want to not allow me to share the photos with vendors, that impacts my relationship with vendors.
That's the part that in the beginning I didn't realize is just how, like, I have like my standard things that I include. And when anybody wants something that's outside of that workflow, even as minor as just remembering that you can publish details, but not faces, you know, like any special request like that just derails the workflow. And like you said, takes extra energy and you should charge accordingly for that. So this is how you run your business. But for me, I already have a clause in there that says I'm allowed to. So when they book, you know, that's already right up front that you are allowing me to use this in advertisement, in media, in all shapes and form. I have the right to edit the name and any of that stuff in there. If they have a request to say, actually, I'm not okay with that clause, and that's that upcharge that you're talking about. Like, sure, I can modify this clause for you. It's going to cost. But Wendy, you should always cover your bases. And like Maggie said, you need these images for your marketing. So if you can't use it, and if you, like even for IG, for example, like absolutely, you have to be able to use that if you want to market and get more clients with that. I say your contract should be based on the ideal situation, which is, you know, you want to be able to use it, you want to be able to sell it, you want to be able to advertise with it. And then if they have any request after that, it could be on a case-by-case basis. But I will tell you, like having shot like hundreds of clients a year, it's a very small fraction of people who have issues with that clause. Color Me Wendy also added that she feels it's problematic to use a client's photo in ads. I mean, I think it all depends on your relationship with your client and having that discussion. Like, I don't hide it from them. You know, I don't secretively sell their work. Like, they know ahead of time when they sign the contract, and people who had issues with it would tell me about it. And also the number of times they sold commercially is really, really rare. Like I've had, I think maybe like 4 got on book covers. And then one was by a greeting card company and one was like that huge billboard. 3 of them were boudoir shoots too. And I told my client and she was fine with it. Yeah, it was from the same client. She was like, yeah, sure. And neither of my clients had any issues with it. So I haven't had a commercial situation turned down, but they But yeah, I do tell my clients, so I don't secretively do it. We had the discussion beforehand. When the offer came in, I told them, hey, like this book wants to use this photo of yours on the cover. Are you cool with that? And they've said, okay.
Totally.
Any thoughts on
clients? Like they love when things like that happen. Like they're like, oh my gosh, look, I'm on a cover. I'm on a greeting card. They love it. And I don't think they have a problem with it for the most part, generally speaking.
So to them, it's just exciting. They feel like a little celebrity, like, oh, cool, I'm gonna be in an ad. Like I'm gonna be, so my clients have been excited about that so far. Yeah. Rick asked an interesting question about model releases and street photography. Is there an example where I may need a photo of someone in the street, but a release is not needed? Like, does it matter if you speak with the subject first? So if you're doing street photography, do you need model releases?
I would highly recommend, if you're doing street photography or working with models or pulling strangers, have a very, very simple model release on your phone that they can just sign off on. It's a very clean and clear, open and shut case. If you use somebody's image without a model release, they're pretty much automatically going to win, and you're going to be subject to fines and fees. So just get that model release signed. Like it's just very clean and clear. Like if you don't have a model release, then you have no right to use their image and their likeness. And even if they're not a celebrity, I spoke with a California attorney recently who specializes in this, and he said there's no way around it. Doesn't matter if you're a stranger, if you're famous or not. There was somebody who wanted to get a book published of street photography, and I came to him with the same question, and he said, do not publish anybody in that book without a model release, because then they can come back and like anything you've made off of that book, they could get a percentage of it and fines and fees. So just have that model release on your phone and just have it, it's super quick and easy.
If you are a volunteer and not charging, but you post photos of, like, let's say you're at a concert, a game, a farmer's market, can you post those on IG without a model release?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on like what the use is. Like, are you taking them with a professional camera and then selling these photos of somebody? That's going to be a totally different story than just Instagramming stuff behind the scenes. If somebody's in public, then they're giving consent to having their image taken. Like they're in public eye and in a public view. But I think the situation shifts and the circumstances are different if you're selling that image commercially for a profit.
Yeah. And that's when he was like, oh, like I'm shooting Snoop Dogg's next music video. And he asked me to shoot his album cover. And I was like, this is amazing. And I was like, how did you quote him? And he's like, I don't know my hourly rate. And I was like, did you talk about licensing and usage rights? Yeah. And he's like, no, like I haven't had to deal with that, because usually either he's working through my contract or someone, so it's like work for hire. But I was like, if he's hiring you directly, you need to, and if this is Snoop Dogg's album cover. Like,
I always like to say, like, your contract is the bad guy and you're the good guy, and you can fall back on it, but you don't have to assert it either. So,
how would you explain to a photographer the difference between copyright, licensing, what they need to clarify, and how to explain that to a client?
Yeah, no, that's such a great question. And I think there's so much ambiguity and like misunderstanding that that's even a thing. But I think there's a lot of people who don't understand like licensing and that's even a concept. A copyright is protection of an original created work. So inherently, when you take a photo or create something that's original, you automatically have copyright protection. Like, you don't have to do anything. People ask me all the time, like, do I need to file a copyright for every photo I take? No, that would be a lot of work. Filing a copyright notification essentially that would be worthwhile if you had like taken like an iconic photo of Obama and everybody around the world is using this image. You would then just have an added layer of notice that you're putting everybody on notice that this is your image, and it just makes it easier in court to assert that it's your image, that you own the rights to it. And it makes it easier to like recoup damages if that were to ever be the case.
I've had to do 2 legal issues with people stealing, like corporate companies stealing my work. And the lawyers who helped me with both of those cases made me file
a copyright.
Yeah.
It
just makes you can retroactively like post-date it, right?
You are already protected when you take a photo. Like, it is your work, and like nobody can take that away from you unless you transfer the copyright to another company, which essentially is like what a wedding client might ask you is for you to transfer the copyright and it to be a work for hire agreement rather than you owning the copyright. And what you're doing when you're licensing it is like you're licensing the use of that image for a particular time, space, location. But by filing the copyright, you already have those rights, but you're just essentially making it easier in court to prove that this is actually your image. Rather than like having to link yourself to that image and prove it in court by evidencing like, here's the raw file data and this is where I took it and here's a behind the scenes photo of me taking this photo, eliminates some additional steps by saying like, I filed a copyright and I've already proven this aspect. So now you're at like that next step already in court. So it just makes it a step easier.
I mean, but then to file it, you have to do all that proving anyway, but at least it expedites the judge's involvement.
Exactly. Yeah. So you're just essentially saying like, I have officially claimed this photo as mine. Like, I've already proved it with the Copyright Office. Here's my registration. And it just eliminates steps in court.
Mommy says, are the contracts written in plain English? I'm concerned most people won't really read it. 1, if it's too long, and 2, too much legal jargon. And so they'll still break the contract without meaning just because they don't understand what they were reading.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that? Because I know I've seen Maggie's contracts and they're very thorough. I always say better thorough and protected, right? Than to leave gray areas. So there's, with her contracts, so like the contract I use is written by her, and there's no room for gray area after that. Like the clients know exactly what will happen if they miss a payment or whatever.
Yeah, I take a different approach to contracts than probably most contracts that everybody's seen. And I want them to be more user-friendly, more friendly towards the client. I like them to read like a guide or a manual to the relationship. So I structure them in a way where they're organized. They're not just like, 1, thou shalt not this. 2, thou shalt do that. Thou shalt pay. I like to have them organized in a manner where it's like very like easily digestible, and very just simple for the client to understand and find whatever information they're looking for. I'm a very large advocate of thoroughness and detail, because I also think, like we were talking about with having subjectivity and discretion over how we do our jobs, I think it's super important that everything's out on the table. So if you only do engagement sessions on the weekends, or if you're a florist and you can't source certain types of florals in certain seasons, like, or if you're a hair and makeup artist and you require an outlet or a certain kind of table or chairs, like all of that, it's better for it to just all be upfront and detailed. And I think that there's a way to like, I don't like legalese. Like everything that I was taught in law school was to make it more plain English and to more just approachable. Like it's just not necessary in this day and age to operate in that way. But it's funny because when I launched The Artist Lawyer, I have been doing photography for 8, 9, 10 years now at this point. And I had my brides started sharing about The Artist Lawyer, like posting it on their Instagram. Like, we love Maggie's contracts. Like it was so clear and like so thorough. And I was just like, well, that's great, but I'm glad that you enjoyed them too.
That's hilarious and unexpected.
Yeah, no, I think it was good feedback too, though. I was like, well, I'm glad that my brides understand too. Like, even though I'm an attorney and I'm also servicing them as a photographer, like I'm not out to get anyone. I don't want it to be legalese. I want it to be fair, and I want it all legal, and just it forms, in my opinion, a better and healthier and longer lasting relationship, and also protects both parties because everything's just out on the table.
Yeah, I agree. let's say you have a client who doesn't pay, like, so right now the clause has like, there's a late payment. Like you said, you can, ease up and not enforce every single thing, but at least you have the right to, if you need to.
Yes. And you have everything in place. God forbid anything negative happens. Yes. If you miss a payment, then you'll be charged a late fee, and then that would accumulate every month. So the thought behind that is, if somebody ghosted you and you've held a wedding date and it's been months, like that late fee would continue to accumulate the later that it gets.
If it's an honest situation, and the client like just didn't get her paycheck or whatever, it's not like I'm going to go after them every single time, but it gives me the right to, if I end up getting burned, that I at least have it on paper that you signed this, that, I am entitled to this. But, it's one of those where it's not that I want to enforce it all the time, but it's comforting knowing that I can if I need to. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, you guys can reach out to Maggie if you have any questions, and check out her contracts in her shop. It covers everything that you would need for wedding photographers, portrait photographers, for any of you guys who are doing associates.
This is so fun. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining me. We don't have to do it all ourselves, right? So there's a lot of other people who are experts in their like special area. So we could just all pull it together. We'd have some really good resources.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
Thanks for having me.